Welcome to Time Management, Quadrants of Effectiveness. I'm Trainer Lori. What are quadrants of effectiveness? It's really how to determine the importance and urgency on your to-do list. In other words, to figure out what's more important. Our goal is to manage ourselves in relation to time. We cannot manage time. So all you can do is manage yourself in relation to time. Too many times we worry about what's going on. I've got so many things to do. But a lot of people say this. I think it's very cute. I did not come up with it. But that is fear. Worry equals fear, and fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real. In other words, we want to plan, strategize, and prioritize. But don't worry. In the book Prioritize, Organize, The Art of Getting It Done, Jonathan and Susan Clark tell us the law of the slight edge. They say that small changes over time make a big difference. So that's what we want to do. Don't try to make a huge change tomorrow. Don't try to change it all. Just figure out one thing that you can do to make it better. So when we talk about prioritize, I happen to live in Florida in the United States. And when there's a hurricane warning, there's several degrees of importance. For example, when it's normal, then you don't worry. But if it's a Category 1, you start thinking, could this cause me problems? Category 2, and all the way up to Category 5, which is catastrophic. Why would they prioritize? Just like if you worked in an ER, an emergency room, there's a prioritization of wounds and issues. And so we want to do the same thing. We want to prioritize our life, especially our to-do list at work. But you might even do this at home. Vilfredo Pareto, who invented the Pareto's principle, that's what we call it now. It's really known as the 80-20 rule. He tells us that 80% of the wealth in Italy comes from 20% of the people. This is what he discovered over 100 years ago, and we still use that 80-20 rule today. Well, the late Stephen Covey tells us that 80% of our effectiveness comes from only 20% of our tasks. So wouldn't we be better off putting more effort and time into that 20% of our tasks that cause 80% of our effectiveness? In other words, the 80% of reasons we get promoted, that we get better job opportunities, comes from only 20% of the things that we do. So we would certainly want to put more time and effort into those 20%. And he tells us the quadrants of effectiveness help us determine what's important and what's not important, but also what's urgent and what's not urgent. And that's what we mean by the quadrants. See, you divide your list into 4 different areas, and these are each quadrants. So the first one is things that are important and urgent, and then important and not urgent, not important and urgent, and not important and not urgent. Quadrant 1 is known as crisis. These are fires that we have to put out, and this is a no-brainer. Everybody needs to know if it's a crisis, you got to get it done. Too many of us, though, spend our life in Quadrant 1. I used to think that I had to have a fire lit under me before I get things done. It's not a good place to live. It causes stress. These are things like important deadlines, pressing and important meetings, emergencies, last-minute preparations. Does that tell you something? We also know that Quadrant 4, which is called waste, if it's not urgent and not important, these are things that we only do if we have extra time. Things like trivia, some phone calls and email, things that are fun but not necessarily important, clearly not important, excessive web surfing, any other time wasters like chatting with people and taking too many coffee breaks, things like that. Now, the hard part is determining between 2 and 3 what is more important. Number 3, Quadrant 3, is the deception quadrant, and this is where we just fix the squeaky wheel, because it sounds like it's urgent, but it's really not. It sounds like it's important, and it certainly is not. Some phone calls and emails may sound urgent. For example, if you have a pop-up every time you get an email, and you're in the middle of a very important conversation with someone else, and you sneak over and look at those pop-ups every time they come up, that is creating a distraction, and it's maybe taking you away from something that is more important. And the email that you're looking at may not be important at all. Many interruptions, when people just come and interrupt your work, often are not important but seem urgent. And some popular activity, things you like to do, and certainly some meetings. Have you ever sat through those meetings that are they take forever and they don't seem to accomplish anything? It sounds like it's not very important, even though it's on the list and we have to do it. And then finally, Quadrant number 2, and I put this last because this is the one most of us don't understand very well. Because if it's not urgent, then it can't be that important, right? But it is important. This is our planning quadrant. This is where we invest in our future, where we take action and we build relationships. So this would be things like maybe when we're having those coffee breaks, if we're talking to people about something and understanding who can do what kind of things for us, that's relationship building, and that would be a good thing. A personal development when you're learning new skills, employee training, exercise, and health. Yes, I take time to run the stairs at least 3 times a day, sometimes 4 times a day. I have 6 flights of stairs here, and I try to run them because otherwise I'd be sitting all day. Sitting on my ball, yes, but still sitting. And then prevention and planning so that you don't have to live in quadrant 1. Let me give you an example. I had to do an RFP once in my career. I was in charge of the requests for proposals. When people would ask us for a request for proposal, I had to respond, and this was not my favorite thing to do. So I would wait, and I got one, and it just seemed like so much work, and I didn't want to do it. So when did I wait? Until the day before it was due, right? Unfortunately, it required a lot of information that I didn't have, so I had to go to virtually everyone else in the company. It was a fairly small company, but still, I had to go to everyone to get this information, and I had to make them stop what they were doing so that I could get this information to get it in for overnight delivery. Finally, I got it done at 10 o'clock at night. Now, I can tell you my family was not happy because I was working till 10 o'clock. Plus, do you know how much it costs to overnight something starting at 10 o'clock at night? It's very expensive. So I wasted a lot of time and effort in that. But the next day I called them, they'd gotten it, and I was very pleased that I'd gotten it done. I was living in quadrant 1. However, when I talked to the gal who received it, she said, "Why did you send it?" And I said, "Because you sent it to us." And she said, "But we're already a client. We didn't need a proposal from you." What? Do you see? If I had made a phone call when I first got it, a few weeks before I put it together, and said, "Why are we getting this since we're already a client?" I would have found this out. I thought I was living in quadrant 1, when really I was living in quadrant 4. What a waste. So that's our goal, is to think before we act. And even if it was something I had to do, if I had started doing it immediately, I could have done it in the not urgent but important quadrant, and I could have built our relationships instead of destroying some relationships by making people stop what they're doing so they can do my pressing problem. So that's when I learned that we need to live in a different quadrant than urgent and important, crisis quadrant. Bernie Meltzer, the University of Chicago law professor, says hard work is often the easy work you did not do at the proper time. And boy, isn't that the truth. I put all that time and effort into something that I didn't have to do at all. It would have been much easier. But I think that I like this one better. There's nothing so useless than doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. Why bother? And I didn't even do it efficiently. So our goal is to do it efficiently, but only if it needs to be done. So I want you to think about if you want to live in quadrant 2, like I do now, instead of living in quadrant 1, or worse, quadrant 4. And that is, for example, let's say you need to manipulate tons of data every week, and you don't know Excel very well. Clearly you need to learn Excel better. So you might take some time and invest in learning Excel better. And while, yes, that may not be on your to-do list, you should put it on your to-do list. So think about it. If it has significant impact on your effectiveness, put it on your to-do list, even though nobody's making you do it, but it will help you in the long run. Ben Franklin, who was actually the father of time management, tells us, "Do not squander time, for that's the stuff life is made of." So let's take our time and use it wisely. That's all this time. If you like this, please click like, and thank you. We'll see you next time.